Our movie starts with a newborn named Elijah, and we see Dr. Madison coming to check on the baby and his mother while waiting for the ambulance to arrive. The mother is very surprised because Elijah doesn't cry. At that moment, Madison examines him and notices that his arms and legs are broken. The mother collapses upon hearing the news. Years pass and we see a guy named David traveling alone on a train. A girl named Kelly sits next to him and David takes off his ring. They get to know each other and chat a little. But when Kelly feels like David is hitting on her, she tells him that she is married and she moves away. David puts his ring back on. Suddenly, the train crashes. Later, we see David in the hospital finding out that only he and another man were the only survivors. But the other man's condition was critical, possibly fatal. After a few moments, they inform the doctor of the death of the other survivor. The doctor is surprised at how David was sitting by the window in the same train car as the passengers and is relatively unharmed, not even a bone broken. Everyone in the hospital is astonished and the media covers it. Then we see him going to console the families of the victims of the train. Afterward, he goes to his car, finding a note inside asking about the number of days he was sick. Unable to remember, he goes to his workplace and asks how many vacation days he's taken so far. It turns out he hasn't taken a single day off in 5 years. Later that night, he asks his wife, Audrey, when was the last time he was sick, and she can't remember him being ill before. They start thinking together even if he ever caught the flu. She can't recall him ever being ill before. David keeps his mind on that matter. We go back to Elijah in 1974 as he grows up. He's afraid to leave his house and go to school because he's always been bullied. Even his friends call him Mr. Glass because he breaks easily like glass. His mother tries to ease his fears and encourage him to go out without being afraid. She tells him she got him a gift left on the street bench in front of their house and explains that if he doesn't take it, someone else might. So he goes down and retrieves the gift, finding it's the first edition of Active Magazine comics. His mother tells him that she bought him the whole collection and will give him one each time he goes out. Elijah falls in love with the details of the illustrated stories, and when he grows up, he opens a museum for illustrated stories. He refuses to sell any of his editions, even if he knows they are for a child, because he believes the paintings are more important to him than being for a child. Back to the present, David and his son Joseph go to Elijah's exhibition. David learns that he found an answer on his car with the name of his exhibition written on it. They sit together and David tells him that he hasn't been tired before. He says he's 75% positive that he never got sick before. But his son responds, saying that David got hurt twice. Then Elijah says he spent the third of his life in a hospital bed doing nothing but reading. He also believes that illustrated stories are a way of transmitting ancient story to us, and that the ancient Egyptians who invented this method through wall drawings and symbols passed it down through generations. He tells him he has a genetic disease called osteogenesis imperfecta, which makes his bone density so low that it breaks like glass, and that he always felt that there must be someone who's the exact opposite of him, not getting sick at all, and he was looking for him until the train accident happened. David understands that Elijah is trying to use him, so he takes his son and leaves. David goes home, and at night, he looks at his gun again and reads about the incidents that happened to him. He was the only one who survived them. Turns out that the train accident wasn't the first tragedy he survived. The next day, he goes to work, and we learn that he works as a security guard at a soccer field. Elijah is also there, following him and trying to convince him to help. At that time, David feels something is wrong, so he orders the security guard at the gate to manually search those entering. He suspects one man of carrying a weapon and says that if he is armed, he will have to leave the line, and indeed, the man leaves the line. So Elijah asks David how he knew the man was armed. David says it was because of the suit he was wearing. He felt he had a silver pistol with a black grip on his pants. Elijah realizes that David has a sixth sense, but David refuses to believe him and walks away to continue his work. Then Elijah leaves the field, gets in his car, and sees the man who left the line. But when he calls out to him, he doesn't respond. So Elijah follows him. However, he stumbles, and before he loses consciousness, he sees that the man does have a gun in his pants, just as David said. Later, David goes home with his son Joseph, and there he tries to lift heavy weights. He is shocked to find out he can lift heavy weights regularly. His son is also impressed because David lifted 270 pounds. When he adds more weight, David can still lift it normally. We go to Elijah in the hospital where he has many fractures in various places and needs to use a wheelchair, then crutches, and then undergo physical therapy to be able to walk normally. We find out that the nurse in charge of his case is Audrey, David's wife. He starts asking her about her husband and she tells him how they met and about the incidents he caused. Betty makes a mistake and mentions David's name, so she's surprised that he knows her husband's name when she hasn't mentioned it. So he tells her that her husband has a superhuman ability and that society needs to believe in superheroes. At that time, David is at work and he tries out the powers he has and feels that one of those entering the stadium has drugs. But when David searches for him, he finds nothing. Then he gets news that his son was injured at the school theater. So David rushes to the school and meets a supervisor there who tells him that his son is suffering from more psychological damage than physical. The supervisor knows him because she once took him to the hospital when he fell into the school pool a while ago, and everyone at school thought he was dead because he stayed at the bottom of the pool for 5 minutes. She tells him that his story is still being told as if he were a ghost, and since then the school rules have changed. Then he walks with his son, and when David asks him what happened, Joseph tells him that he was defending a Chinese girl who was being bullied. He thought he was a superhero like David, but it turned out he was just an ordinary kid, not a superhero. At night, the family gathers in the kitchen. Audrey tells David what happened today at the hospital with Elijah and about the theory he explained to her. At that moment, David finds his son holding his gun and wants to hit him with it to prove to him that he is a superhero. David tells his son that if he shoots him, he will drop dead and there is no such thing as super abilities. Joseph breaks down and drops the gun. The next day, Elijah goes to David, who tells him that the man who was inside the stadium who got out of the line was holding a silver gun with a black grip, exactly as he explained. Elijah tells David that he feels that the car accident he had years ago didn't injure him at all, but he claimed he was injured to have an excuse to quit football and be able to marry Audrey because she didn't want her husband to be a football player. This way he can retire completely and marry the girl he loves. But David didn't care about what he was saying and asked him to stop ruining his life even more and not to interfere in it anymore. We see David having dinner with his wife in a romantic place, and they talk about how distant they have become from each other, so Audrey tells him that she will take care of it and fix things again. After they leave and David gets a call from New York offering him a job there, Audrey tells him he should go for it if he wants to travel and not to worry about her. Then he listens to a recorded message, and it's Elijah telling him that he is confident he's extraordinary and different from the others, and that they are the opposite of each other in almost everything except for their fear of water. At that moment, David remembers the car accident he had and that he didn't actually get injured then. Audrey was with him in the car and he managed to get her out. Then he decided to quit football, pretending to be injured in the car accident and marry Audrey. Then he calls Elijah and learns that he never actually got injured in his life, so what can he do now? Elijah asks him to go to a crowded place where he can imagine the crimes these people committed. David does so and goes there. He sees a woman in a red jacket who stole a jewelry store, another man who hit an African-American woman in the street and ran away, and he also sees a man who is a sadistic janitor. He invaded a family house, killed a father, and he's now holding the mother and her 2 kids in the house. So he decides to tail him until he reaches the house where he is and discovers that this man has kidnapped an entire family. He quickly frees them. The janitor pushes him into a swimming pool from the balcony, where he nearly drowns as he cannot swim, but he's rescued by the children. David strangles the janitor to death, but finds the janitor has killed the mother too. The next morning, David shows Joseph a newspaper article featuring a sketch of the anonymous hero, whom Joseph recognizes as his father and tearfully promises to keep a secret. David didn't want him to tell anyone the secret so that Audrey wouldn't worry about him. Then he went to Elijah's comic book exhibition, and when David touched hands with Elijah for a handshake, he saw that he was the cause of all the accidents that happened to him, including the train accident. Elijah tells him that he did all this to find his superhero rival, and he revealed to David his childhood nickname, Mr. Glass. Elijah told David how every hero needs to find his arch-villain in the comic book, and when they do, they find out he's the exact opposite version of them and that they usually start as friends. Just like you and I, he said. David leaves the place shocked and sad, leaving Mr. Glass in the background talking like a maniac as he reports him to authorities, and Elijah is arrested for committing 3 terrorist acts based on evidence found at his place. And now, he's in a facility for mentally ill criminals. Elijah is confined to a psychiatric hospital for the criminal acts he committed. And that's it. If you like this recap, hit like, share, and subscribe to our channel to keep seeing content like this one. If you have any requests or thoughts, drop them below in the comments section and we will see you at the next one. Peace out.